Welcome back to another episode of Classic Mustangs 429. It's 2020. It's been a while, guys. I'm truly sorry about the wait. Life's got a little hectic lately, but we're back in it, trying to get back into the groove and get that content out to you guys. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're actually showcasing three cars. One is the 65 Fastback that everyone saw me get ready for Hot Rod Power Tour and take it on Hot Rod Power Tour last year. We got this 1965 Comet that me and Dad went down to Arizona and picked up about 4 to 5 years ago. And we also got the 1964 Fairlane that, again, some of you might have seen in past episodes. So we're going to talk about those three cars and what it takes to get a car ready for Hot Rod Power Tour. I hope you enjoy. Alright guys, so here we got the 1965 Fastback. Most of you probably know this car through my preparation for Hot Rod Power Tour videos. I did take it on Hot Rod Power Tour in 2019, had a blast of a time with all the guys. Dylan McCool, Junkyard Diggs, Thunderhead 289, Vice Grip Garage, DeBoss Garage, all those great guys. Just an amazing trip. So we're going to try and replicate it this year in 2020 with one of those two other cars that I was talking about, the 65 Comet and the 64 Fairlane, one of those. But basically, I put about a month's work of time in this car prior to Hot Rod Power Tour. And basically, we're just going to dive into this car and talk about all the features or add-ons that I did to make it safe and reliable for the Hot Rod Power Tour trip. And basically, the exact same thing I'm going to try and do to the other cars. Maybe not to this extent because it got a little crazy with the rear differential and a few other things like an engine swap. But basically, we're just going to talk about what you need to do to make a car safe and reliable for Hot Rod Power Tour. So let's dive in, pop the hood, talk about a few things, and get you started. All right, guys, so we're going to start under the hood here. I'm going to give you some advice. If you don't want to listen to it, by all means, don't listen to it. But from my experience, I've done 2 power tours now. This will be my 3rd. I see something time and time again when we go on power tour. Driving through small little towns or driving into the car show, the lineups are pretty long. So the cars are sitting there idling. And one of the major problems is simply overheating. So in here on the 65 Fastback, you can see the cold case aluminum rad. It's a 2-core aluminum rad, very nice unit. Had absolutely no problem sitting in traffic on Power Tour last year. It's a 2-core rad. This was a direct bolt-in kit. Had absolutely no problems with the fit. They offer ones for automatic transmission, manual transmission, 5-liter swaps if you're running the opposite, water pump. So they'll offer different ports. And up in front of it, you can see the GC Coolant Electric Fan. That's another great unit. I didn't really have to use it on Power Tour, but I have it on my 66 Coupe, Old Blue, and it works like a charm, has no problems, comes with its own wiring harness. Very nice kit. And same with the cold case aluminum rad. Next, you're going to see I went ahead and I did 4-wheel disc brakes. Am I saying you need to do 4-wheel disc brakes? No. Am I saying to get rid of the 4-wheel drums? Absolutely. So I went with lead brakes. Lead brake makes a bolt-on kit as well for the front disc brakes. The rear is for the 8-inch or 9-inch housing. Great kits, both front and back. If you're definitely running 4-wheel drums, I would recommend at least swapping out the front to disc brakes. Manual or power option is another thing you want to look into. Most of these cars came with single reservoir master cylinders. I would definitely recommend going to a dual reservoir master cylinder just in case something were to happen to one of the brake lines or something like that. Next, I went ahead and contacted Aldan American. They sent me their front and rear Mustang coilover shock system. Coilovers in the front, shocks in the back. Another great kit, lots of adjustability, easy bolt-on, and if you ever have to take apart your front suspension anymore, you don't have to worry about spring compressors and taking the shocks out. It's simply 1 bolt up top and your simple 2 bolts on your control arm, and the whole coilover shocks assembly comes out. So if you're ever doing like a Shelby drop, it's super easy. Lastly, I went ahead and I did a complete painless wiring harness kit for the 1965-1966 Mustang. Actually, I was a little worried, I'll be honest. I'm not an electrical guy by any means. I've never wired a car before that time. And to be honest, I think I had the car rewired in about 2 to 3 days. So if you're working on it, if you're following their instructions and looking at the wires, they're very easily labeled and very easy to figure out where they go. They're all clumped in certain harnesses. But basically super easy kit to install, and definitely recommend it for anyone that's running the old original wiring harness that might be dried up or cracked or frayed from mice chewing up your wiring harness. So definitely look into that if you're planning on doing a long trip. So inside the car you can see the 1966 odometer gauge kit. This car is a 65, however I went and swapped in the 66 bezel. The reason for that is I liked the 5-pod unit rather than the 2-pod with the sweeping speedometer. So I went with their kit. Another great option if you're looking for new gauges. If you have old tired out gauges, Odometer is definitely a company to look forward to. So I'm sure many of you have seen it by now, but I went ahead and swapped in a 5-liter and a 5-speed before I went ahead on Power Tour. The reason I did that is obviously the engine was shot, but the reason I went with the 5-speed is not only for enjoyability, but 5-speed for the overdrive. So one of the other things I recommend for you to do to your car is definitely to run an overdrive transmission, whether it's an automatic or manual transmission. So I'm just going to stay here because it's nice and comfy, but another upgrade or another cleanup you should be doing is definitely a fuel tank. If your old fuel tank's all gummed up, you don't want that stuff getting into your carburetor. So definitely run a fuel filter if you're not going to change out the fuel tank. But if you can, I think the Mustang one was $150. Another thing, it was a luxury. I didn't have it, but it was a luxury for other people on Power Tour, is wiper blades. Okay, make sure your wiper blades work, because I didn't have them and I was simply relying on Rain-X. Rain-X worked. Did it work great? Not really. When you're at low speeds, it doesn't really work that great. When you got to the higher speeds, sure, it worked a lot better. It deflected the rain off, but wiper blades is definitely a necessity. Definitely bring a cooler. Definitely bring tools, because you never know when you're going to break down or when someone else needs tools. Other than that, try to have the best time that you can. It's a great experience. If you've never done Hot Rod Power Tour before, I definitely recommend it as one of the trips of the year. And generally speaking, once you have your car ready for Hot Rod Power Tour and it completes Hot Rod Power Tour, you're going to still realize that your car needs a few other things along the way. But once you get back, if your car completed Hot Rod Power Tour, you can pretty much drive across the country and have zero problems. Okay, so that being said, that about wraps it up for what you need. Now we're going to go ahead and start talking about the other cars, the 65 Comet and the 64 Fairlane, and just showcase what those cars are, what they have engine-wise, transmission-wise, what they need to make Hot Rod Power Tour a little safer, and hopefully get to work on those things in the next episode. All right, so back over to the 1965 Comet. We're going to talk a little bit about what I'm planning on doing to this car to help get it ready for Power Tour. Am I saying I'm taking this car on Power Tour? No, I'm not saying that yet. It's between this and the 64 Fairlane. So that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about this car. One of the first things I'm going to point out is the rad, or radiator, because some people got mad at me for saying rad. So the radiator, that's one of the things I'd recommend. Make sure that you have a good working radiator. Is your car staying cool? Is your car staying cool under temperatures in the sense of in traffic? If not, give it a flush. Check to make sure that your heater core is not plugged. Check to make sure that your radiator is not plugged. So if that's the case, change the rad.
This car also needs head gaskets. So we're going to take the heads off, put brand new head gaskets on, and we're also going to go ahead and put a 4-barrel on while we're here. It is a 2-barrel car. Lastly, it's got a single reservoir master cylinder. I noticed there's not a lot of room underneath that brace. So I don't think I'll be running power brakes. So I'm going to run a dual reservoir manual master cylinder there. It is a power steering car, but something happened with the slave, the power steering slave. So that's about it up front. Moving along to the interior. We still got our Ratty themed interior. I'm not changing a single thing on here, leaving it just as is. It's got the aftermarket or dealer installed air conditioning unit, under dash air conditioning unit. Floor pans, super solid, just like the Texas car, as you can assume from an Arizona car. And yeah, that's it. Just check to make sure all the gauges work. If the gauges don't work, fix them, change them out. As you can see, it's kind of like a 66 Mustang style with the 5 pod. But other than that, it's staying just as you see it, nice and ratty. Might throw the door panels back on, might not. It's got some good storage unit in there, but that's good. Dad and I already did a lot of work on this car when we were in Arizona. I'm definitely going to go ahead and put some disc brakes on this car up front. Probably not going to go to the extent of the 65 Fastback with 4-wheel disc brakes, but it's definitely an option if I were to ever want to. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this car. There's not a lot of things to do. Let's go on over to the 64 Fairlane now. All right, so the 64 Fairlane has moved locations from where you last saw it. This car has a few more things to do than the 65 Comet. So we're going to dive into this and talk a little more about what it needs and hopefully get everything solved before I pull these cars out for springtime and hopefully get some breakdown hours on these cars and see which one is more reliable than the other. Under here, we have the 289, a lot cleaner of an engine. Honestly, it's probably a much better runner than the 65 Comet. It already has a 4-barrel intake and 4-barrel carb. However, you saw in the previous episodes that we're still having some problems with the carburetor. So it's going to need a carburetor rebuild. I'm also going to go ahead and check the brakes and hopefully put a dual reservoir master cylinder on there. Probably change out the generator system for an alternator, just because if something were to happen and the generator breaks, I have a higher likelihood of not finding a generator than an alternator. So swap out the generator for an alternator, even though it's a 64 and that's what it came with. Power steering, make sure all the power steering works up to snuff, and just simply go over the front suspension, just like I said over at the 65 Comet. Check all the bushings, check all the control arms, check all the ball joints, tie rods, and links, etc. The wiring, I believe, for this car is all good. The only thing I need to check is the shifter linkage. The shifter linkage is kind of janky up there, but basically it just needs to get adjusted so that when it's in park and everything's good. There's no safety hazard there where I'm in, I think I'm in park, but I'm actually going to be backing up into someone or the car's going to start driving away. Like I said, I got to check the brakes, make sure all the brakes are working. I believe this car is a 4-wheel drums as well. So again, if I were to ever take this car on power tour or on a long trip, I would definitely want to be putting some front wheel disc brakes on there. So that's definitely in the future. Just seems to be the theme with all our cars is the ratty interior, like literally ratty interior, but we're going to give it a good clean out, take out all that original carpet or whatever you, yeah, it's pretty gross carpet. Clean up the interior, check to make sure all the gauges work, just like I said with the 65 Comet. Just clean it up, get everything going, and this car's got a few little holes in there, as you can see. So either going to do a vice grip garage and just give her some some solid patchwork with some license plate because I got a box full of them in my basement, or I'm going to see if there's any companies that reproduce these floor pans and go ahead and patch them up. Because honestly, the rest of the car, the floor pans are super solid. It's just the back. So that being said, we're gonna go to the back now. Now, one thing everyone might realize with this car is that it sits really low in the back. And when you go on power tour, generally speaking, you're gonna pack that trunk full of stuff. So I'm either gonna have to get some new leaf springs or try and re-arch these leaf springs, and maybe some better shocks just to bump this old girl up a little bit. And if it goes too high in that scenario, then I'll put some lowering blocks and bring it back down to a respectable height. Inside the trunk, oh my God, look at the rat. I'm just kidding. Inside the trunk, we have an old two-barrel carb, probably the original air cleaner, a console, center console, spare tire, the car jack, some original hubcaps there. But one of the major problems back here is I don't have a trunk mechanism that works. And also there's this strip edge here. I don't know if it's overexposing this. This drip edge right here, all along for the weather stripping. I guess the weather stripping absorbed all the moisture when this car was sitting out in a field, and just rotted all of that. So with that being said, I'm gonna have to put some of my metal work to training and get some of that fixed. It is pretty brutal. Hopefully it's not that difficult of a thing to do, but I feel like it's gonna be a little bit of a problem. That's pretty well it. Make sure the taillights work. This car we haven't really worked on, unlike the 65 Comet, but I would definitely love to see this car go on power tour. Oh, check that out. Look at that patina. It's like awesome. I just think it looks unreal. Just looks amazing. Like, look at that faded top. It's definitely a car that I'd love to bring. All that beautiful trim. Like, I don't even care about this little pinhole stuff. It looks freaking killer if you ask me. So with that being said, that pretty much wraps it up for this episode of cars to take on Hot Rod Power Tour. I want to hear what you guys think. What do you think? 64 Fairlane? This car right here? Or the car from earlier, the 65 Comet? You let me know in the comments below. And if you like what you saw, feel free to hit the like and subscribe button below. And make sure to check out Dylan McCool, Junkyard Digs, Thunderhead 289, Vice Grip Garage, and obviously DeBoss Garage for more awesome content. Thanks for watching, guys. Mike from Classic Mustangs 429, signing out.